Hi everyone, welcome to the next short attention span webinar. This is on how many calls to make in a day. And Kelly, we're taking a big chance here, don't you think?
I love this topic. I think this is a great one that everyone asks themselves from time to time.
Well, if we get any feedback, any pushback on this, I've got an out because I had my wisdom teeth taken out last Friday. So we can just blame me.
Blame the Vicodin.
Hey, they're free. What are they going to do, right? They're going to say, "Oh, that was terrible. I want my money back." Wait, they're free.
Right.
So yeah, you know, it is a good question. It is one we get quite a bit. What we've done is we've divided these up into groups. And Kelly, I don't know if you noticed, but I rewrote this and I added that last one, that's selling owners. We're going to get to that because I think that oftentimes they get either overlooked or they kind of duck their head down, and I'm going to include them as well. So let's just start out with the newbies. Kelly, I've broken this up into 3 groups, okay? So somebody who is just brand new, out of the chute, out of the egg, out of the womb, 0 to 30 days. What kinds of numbers should we be putting to somebody who's just starting out like that?
Yeah, in that first category, the 0 to 30, it's got to be at least 20 a day, I would say. I mean, this is really the opportunity to just remember that every call you make, you're going to get a little bit better, and you're going to learn something new. So it's going to make you stronger. And even though that sounds like a huge number, it's when you really think about it, it's not that many. But we really need some positive, strong momentum and a big commitment in that first month.
And you know what? As I was writing this, I was thinking to myself, it would be a really good subject, a really good short attention span webinar to talk about those first 90 days and what you need to be successful in that time. You need a good talk track, you need a good voicemail, things like that. So I was halfway through writing that and I ran out of time. I am putting that one out there. So, okay.
It's tough. That first 90 days, it's so hard. So it's just about commitment and staying bulletproof and just powering through it, really.
And then ending every day saying, "This sucks, I can't do this," and starting every day saying, "Okay, all right, I'll give it another try."
Right.
And if that's not something that's in you, then sales is not for you. Simple as that. Okay, so 0 to 30 is like 20 calls a day. Now what? Now at 30 days, Kelly and I want you to stop and evaluate. Who am I calling on? What am I saying? What's working? What's not working? Completely reassess, reboot, relaunch, and go. So for the second phase of that, Kelly, what would you change the number to?
It's probably not going to be reduced by too much, but we also want to remember that this whole effort is cumulative. So we may still be making some calls, second and third and fourth calls from those first 30 days into that second segment. But it's still a lot. But again, all of new business development is cumulative. So we have to kind of respect that and bear in mind that the further we go, the more calls we're making, and we're adding new prospects to the pipeline every day. So again, it's still a lot, but as Bill, you just said, you really want to be thinking every time, is this a good prospect for me? Is this the right person that I'm calling on? Do I feel good about what I'm saying? And the important thing to remember is at any minute you can change it. If you're not getting good response and you're getting a lot of put-offs and you're just not scheduling a lot of appointments, it's time to sharpen your pencil and change that talk track a little bit until you get a track that starts to give you some positive results.
Okay, so for someone to be in the teens during that, teens, okay, we're good there. And then the third phase of that is 61 to 90 days. So now it's looking like, okay, we're getting some appointments, and the strange irony of getting good at this is that the better you get at sales, the less time you have to grow your sales. So here, we're assuming that you are making better calls, smarter calls, you're managing your time better, all of this. So the 61 to 90 day range, probably still in the double digits, wouldn't you think, Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely between 10 and 20, because what we're really focusing on, any salesperson's goal should be that when they look at their calendar, there's a lot going on. So you've got some appointments scheduled, as Bill said. And again, the busier you get, the more you're going to have to realize that you're going to have to make room for production meetings and meeting with estimating, looking at maybe delivering some proofs and things like that. So this is where it gets really exciting because you're juggling your time and you're figuring out how to get everything in. And yes, business development and making those calls is still a very, very, very important element to that.
Okay, so now about the 90-day range, we're pretty sure that you're going to make it as a salesperson, Ms. Malazzi. So now,
thank you.
Now, you're welcome. Now it's going to be a better call. It's going to be a more targeted call. And it's going to be, in the first one, we said, yeah, you got to make tons of calls. Well, this is less than tons. The goal here is to make, this is still a substantial number. I think this should be between 6 and 8 calls a day. But they're high-quality calls. These are calls that you've researched. These are calls where you know your target market. You've got a good idea of what their issue is. You've got a good idea of what you're going to say. 6 to 8 is my number. Kelly, comments?
Yeah, I'd still say, I really never let my number get below 10 when I was actively selling. I still felt like it was really important. And another great element here is that theoretically there should be some good referral calls and much warmer, I promised Joe I would call you today, those kinds of calls. So not every single thing you're doing is a cold call. It's a lot more, as you said, higher quality, again, more thought out, real strategic planning behind a lot of these calls.
And I'm also going to throw this out there, Kelly, for comment. I think at this stage, if you're still making 20-plus calls a day, there's a problem.
There could be. Again, if it's because the indication there would be that you haven't gotten any traction with anybody yet, which means that there needs to be a change in what you're offering and how it is that you're going about trying to schedule appointments. Because right now, and really this is true of anybody that's doing business development, the main goal of business development calls is to get face-to-face meetings with people so that you can establish that rapport and get some business, get some orders in. And so yeah, if you still have the time to be making that many calls because you haven't scheduled any meetings, then that's a whole separate issue.
Okay. All right. So then, moving on, the veterans. These are the salespeople who are well established. They've got a good book of business, and they tend to sit back on their heels and say, "I got it going on." You still need to make calls. You still need to make calls. Only you know if you are working absolutely as hard as you can. Everybody thinks they're busy. I think everybody needs to make a minimum number of calls on a daily basis.
Yes.
Everybody. Okay? My advice is pick a number, add 1. Add 1.
Yep.
That one extra call. If you say, all right, Bill, I'm going to make 1 call a day, that's fine. You make your call for you make 1 more call for me. 1 more call. Because if it's just 1 and you make 2, you've doubled your selling effort. Something good is going to happen.
Right.
You're going from 20 calls a month to 40 calls a month. New business calls. Comment on that, Kelly?
Yeah, I think the important thing for the veterans out there that aren't making calls right now is that one of the things that you might be, you're noticing that just by virtue of being in business, you're going to lose some accounts. Year over year, there's going to be consolidations, companies are going to go out of business, people are going to retire. So if you don't continue to fill a pipeline with new opportunities, you're going to wind up at the end of the year going, how did I just make 25 grand less this year than I made last year? And that's what we want you to avoid at all costs, is to, at the very least, maintain, stay ahead of that attrition. And and even better would be to continue to grow, even though you're making a great living and you love what you do. Just it's part of what makes you great, is the ability to bring in the new business. So you owe it to yourself to continue to to put effort toward that.
And finally, the selling owners. It is very important that you set a daily sales goal for a lot of reasons. Number 1, it keeps you sales focused. Number 2, if you have a salesperson working for you, you are leading by example. Okay? Also very important. Set that time aside. People do things in different ways. Some people will say, you know what, I'm going to call a couple customers a day and 2 prospects a day. That's great. Pick that number. And then to make certain that it happens, set a time frame to it. Even if it's just, 2 calls a day. I'm going to make 2 calls a day by 10 a.m. Kelly, what does that second part do, that 10 a.m.? What does that do for
Well,
us?
it still leaves you open to get everything else that you need to get done, but it's early enough in the day that hopefully that other stuff hasn't, piled up on you, and people, everybody that works for you has that bad habit of anytime they need you, they just, run to your door and knock on your door and run in and, ask you to solve this problem or put out this fire or deal with this. But if you make the commitment to get it done by 10, it's like exercise. Then it's out of the way. You don't have to think about it anymore. And Bill, as you mentioned, you're setting a good example. And really, you should be, and probably are, the best salesperson within your organization. I remember HP told one of my old bosses that you have got to be the one to lead the charge. And it's just a great way to be. It's a good mindset to put yourself in.
Oh, it's also, you know what, if you make 2 calls a day, it puts you in a great mood. I made my 2 calls today. There's something valuable about that as well. So, okay, so, hey, you got comments on this? I'll give you Kelly's home phone number. You can just call her, because obviously I'm impaired. So there's a couple of opinions on how many calls to make in a day. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, we'll talk to everybody next week.